Hey everyone, welcome back to the 443 Security Simplified. I'm your host, Mark LaLiberty, and joining me today is...
Corey Kerberosti Knockreiner.
Is it a strong
Kerberosti
or
in here.
a kind of roast? Is it dark, light, medium?
A little bit of dark. I've been on vacation.
There you go.
But it's not very strong, as we'll learn later on.
No, it is not. On today's episode, we will cover a massive software supply chain attack affecting some NPM packages with a huge amount of software downloads. After that, we'll talk about ClickFix, used to deliver PowerShell attacks to unsuspecting victims. But then we'll end with a discussion of an open letter sent by Senator Wyden to the FTC trying to hold Microsoft accountable for Kerberoasting and other potential security
So if you read the letter at first, hold them accountable for all ransomware.
Yep, exactly. With that, let's go ahead and, golden ticket our way in.
Wow, that's a deep cut. I wonder how many people know. Pass that golden ticket.
Authenticated. So, Corey, let's start with the first story for this week, where I remember when this popped up, I think I saw it on simultaneously on the only social media I use, which is Reddit and Blue Sky. But it was being labeled as one of, if not the biggest, software supply chain attacks in history. Where last week,
and by the way, one related to a platform we'll be talking about that we've talked about other software supply chain attacks, but maybe not quite as big. Or is this one? We'll talk about a little bit about the bigness, but yeah.
The bigness. Yes. Eloquent.
Bigly. Well, our country has the bestest words, so I have to use them.
So last week, researchers uncovered a massive software supply chain attack affecting over 20 popular Node Package Manager or NPM packages that had a combined weekly downloads of 2.67 billion, which is insane. We've talked about software package compromises many times over the years on this podcast. And usually it's a couple thousand downloads here, maybe 100,000 downloads there. Seeing them with a combined of 2.67 billion weekly downloads is pretty nuts.
And that's why, by the way, they say big. I think it's as far as we've seen Trojan NPM packages, occasionally legit, but often just renamed ones. But these were really popular ones. So that amount of downloads is why it's big. I'll wait. I'm going to let you finish, Mark. But what's surprising is we'll talk about this, and it really is a huge, sophisticated digital supply chain attack. But the impact of it,
it's the dumbest thing ever.
Freaking waste. This is something that could have, but we'll get to that. Let's keep going.
So they were primarily targeting packages maintained by one developer, Josh Junon, goes by Kix, QIX on NPM and GitHub. And the actual attack was interesting. We'll go over the phishing email that John received that led to this. But like Corey just hinted at, the impact was just really dumb. So relatively sophisticated attack. They eventually injected some malicious JavaScript in these packages that basically added a hook into anywhere that it was running to look for web requests in someone's browser. If the web request matched, or contents of the web request matched a cryptocurrency wallet signature, the malicious implant would overwrite the destination wallet for whatever transaction it was to one under the attacker's control, basically hijack any cryptocurrency transactions going through it. So,
which, by the way, even that could be big, I guess, if you got the right. We've seen crypto thefts like this with cryptocurrency kind of stealers that have gotten millions of dollars. But I feel like they picked the wrong, NPM, the target audience is developers. And it seems like that's a great audience if you really want to have malware go across the entire Linux and development supply chain. But I guess if you're looking for big cryptocurrency transactions, maybe not. But maybe you'll get to that. So I do want to, I'm basically saying it still could be big if we're just looking at this, because crypto transactions are big money nowadays if you have the right target.
It's interesting because this feels kind of like a. I mean, it was targeted in that they sent a spear phishing message to this developer. I'm assuming they sent them to many developers. There was at least one other one that got hit with another package getting compromised as well. But like the type of attack seems like borderline opportunistic, in that, like in the past, when we've seen supply chain attacks that target cryptocurrency specifically, they'll go after like a library that is used by a wallet that's used by like a crypto exchange or something,
Yeah,
and that's how they'll do like a very targeted cryptocurrency attack. This was just like go after big, widely used npm packages, insert your
yeah.
crypto stealing malware, and hope it works.
Frankly, what they should have done is some sort of very quiet backdoor so that they could have slowly infiltrated the community that uses these well-known packages, got millions of victims, and then gone back to see what the victim pool was to figure out the real secondary payloads. So, yeah, I agree. If you really want the big crypto transactions, you go for the crypto libraries. This could have gotten them a lot of the industry being hijacked. Not just the developers, of course, but eventually when they Trojan the packages, anyone that uses tools that use those packages. But the fact that if it wasn't doing well, I guess we'll talk about that. There is one way they caught this attack that actually had less to do with the malware in the packages, I think. But let's keep going.
Yeah, so how they got access to the developer's account was a pretty simple phishing email, but one where they really went to some efforts to like make sure it would succeed. Where they registered a new domain called npmjs.help just a couple days before launching this attack, so it would have a clean history. They set up a working
And
like
to
email
pause
server
there
with.
real quick, NPMJS is a real organization, and there's probably a domain, I haven't looked it up, it's probably com.org that's real, right? The only
Mhm.
newness about this was the top level .help.
Yep.
So while maybe people should like this is a name that exists, so it's a trickier than average domain that you would, I think many people would assume is legit. Might be one of the domains that they expect npm.js to own.
Yep. Because the attacker owned the domain, they were able to get valid SPF, DKIM, and DMARC records. So the message passed all those checks. It wasn't like they were spoofing a legitimate domain, which would cause those to fail. The message content itself was well written. Researchers have been pointing out they suspect it was at least aided by artificial intelligence to polish it, where it was grammatically clean, no typos. It was written like a generic corporate message that NPM might send out to multiple developers. And the hook was somewhat believable. They basically said, you haven't updated your MFA token in more than 12 months. You'll get locked out of your account tomorrow if you don't go update your MFA token. So you could see how someone who's maybe, I don't know, sleep deprived, like the developer said, and in a rush might fall for this type of fish. And it was enough to compromise their account, where they eventually lost access to their account until the NPM organization restored access after removing the malware. They weren't the only ones getting hit by this. A couple hours later, there was another developer that got nailed. And after all this, like impacting 2.6, well, a combined 2.6 billion downloads worth of packages. Last I checked just a couple minutes ago, the cryptocurrency wallets have about $500 in them.
And
So,
yeah, that's what I was alluding to well before. Like, amazing, like from a threat perspective, an attacker perspective, this is an amazing campaign that really could have netted huge if they were quieter. They having those 20 packages over time leak into the entire development community could have been a huge thing. But the fact that like it's only gotten about $500 and they say they only expect it to get up to a couple thousand. It's funny that the biggest supply chain attack is like a couple $1,000.
yep. I mean, they actually went to some efforts to like mask the wallet or transaction hijacking too. They used an algorithm to make the replacement wallet address be like very close to the one that it was replacing, so that if you're just like looking at the first couple letters or the last couple letters and looks just about the same, you might not notice that the transaction's been modified before you sign it in your wallet. But yeah, it's this could have been much worse. And I know it
Yeah.
sucks for whoever lost a couple $100 here, but This is, I think, bullet dodged on this one at least. But I think it still points like pretty big issue. Like one person falling for a fish impacted 2.7 billion downloads worth of libraries in this case.
I can't remember what our prediction was, but it's just more proof that I think we talked about low and slow cons and supply chain. Like we've been predicting supply chain attacks are the new thing. They grab such a huge potential victim base, and this one may not be completely considered low and slow the way the one XY Utils one was, in that they spent years actually conning and social engineering that legitimate open source group to let them in as a developer. But it is a little slower than average, and they took a lot of time in making legitimate infrastructure. And like you said, by the way, maybe you'll get to it, but it wasn't the crypto transactions or even the booby trapped packages that were what threw this off. If I read right from Varonis, the only way they caught this very sophisticated AI assisted phishing email is AI assisted phishing detection.
Yep. Which that's feels like another prediction of it's just going to be an AI versus AI future at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, I guess thankfully, bullet mostly dodged in this one. I guess it just grazed our ear and bloodied it a little bit, but could have been worse. um. Anyways, so moving on to the next story though. So another type of social engineering trend that we've seen, I think we talked about it maybe a couple months ago now, seems to be picking up, and it's even got a name now. Or I saw a blog post last week on cybersecuritynews.com talking about that type of social engineering attack that's called ClickFix, where it's basically tricking users into running commands on their local machine in order to pass a fake CAPTCHA test on a portal. The example that this site showed was like faking an airport Wi-Fi hotspot, for example. It would prompt the users to prove that they're not a robot in order to connect to it. So pops up a little window saying, prove you're not a robot, click the CAPTCHA. Under normal circumstances, it would spin for a little bit and say, yep, you're good to go. In this case, though, it pops up another little window saying, oh, we need additional verification. Use these Windows shortcuts and follow these steps. Where in this example, it has them use Control S, which saves the web page itself, then tells them to go to their downloads folder and open that saved copy of the web page. Then on that saved copy, they do another shortcut command, Control Paste, and hit Enter, which will trigger a download of a PowerShell script that they're then instructed to execute. The reason they haven't like saved the page in this case is to bypass some of the safety mechanisms that Chrome has or Edge has when you're just browsing the web normally that don't apply when you're browsing a local HTML file, like a copy of the page.
By the way, this immediately might a couple comments I'll share here later when we talk about this, but I do think, well, this is a novel technique for bypassing a normal download where Microsoft will give you warnings. This never happens in the real life. If you're on any site that gives you 5 steps, like this reminds me of back in high school and college days, if you click on something and it's yeah, I'll give you this free pirated thing, but you have to go here to this site and do this and that. It's always freaking malware. If you have to do 5 steps to verify you're freaking human that have hotkeys, it's not just numbers and pictures. Just leave right away. This should be an easy one to figure out for even the average user. That's my opinion. I don't know if you have a different hot take, but
I think this specific one involving like opening downloads and grabbing a file, like this one, hopefully most people would recognize it. The one that's still a little more devious that I feel like works probably a bit better is where instead of having them download the page, they say, okay, use Control R, and which is the hotkey to pull up Windows Run, and then Control P and Control V in order to copy paste in there. I could see that getting some people that
I don't know.
are not
I like
technical.
how a CAPTCHA requiring hotkeys. It blows. I don't. There's no real company that would ever expect even though they're telling you the hotkeys. If you're telling a normal user, which can include grandpas and grandmas, and it includes a hotkey, I just run. Don't do it
Problem is,
unless
like,
you're.
it's clearly working, like, because we're seeing more and more of this type of social engineering, which
So my question is how? Like, I love talking about this. This also talks about rogue APs, right? Because the whole premise of this is you're in a public location where you expect to have some free Wi-Fi, like an airport. This attack is not going to be long lived. Airports have tons of security in the place that there's free Wi Fi. As soon as there's a rogue AP having free Wi Fi, I'm pretty confident, even with lax security practices, it's not going to live a day or two before it's hunted down and gotten rid of. So I think they might have found this once where there might be a little hacker at DEF CON doing it. And does that mean it's widespread across the United States at a bunch of airports? You and I go to airports. I do see plenty of Wi-Fi, and I occasionally see personal hotspots that have funky names that are trying to get you to join. But I know none of those are long-lived, and they're not like campaign attacks that are sitting at the airport for a long time.
yeah,
So I'm going to throw some shade to this article and say, is this really happening a lot? Or is it
I don't
just
think the
a new technique with the interesting stuff that someone wanted to talk about?
the Wi-Fi one, most certainly not. But this type of like ClickFix of like the fake captcha and then prompting users to do stuff, see it all the time in just generic social engineering emails. Like the, hey, we've got a Google Drive doc for you to go visit. You go click on the link and, oh, before you can view it, solve this captcha kind of thing. Those ones do pop up, I think, way more frequently than a rogue Wi-Fi hotspot would.
And you're just
But
talking about normal browsing. And that I agree. Like if you're going to any shady sites that deal with torrents or piracy or talk about third party repositories with free stuff, shady captchas and ClickFix stuff, that I will agree is
yeah,
definitely going up a bit.
but even then, this does show a trend where attackers are needing to require more and more user interaction in order to actually succeed. And the more interaction you need from the user, like the higher the chances they realize it's bogus and they don't fall for it, or they just don't do it because they're lazy. So I think that's maybe a good trend out of this, where instead of the, here's a login form, enter your username and password, or here's a file download, go download and run it. Now
Yeah.
there are these like multi-step attacks. And I think that means our defenses and our training are
Are
getting better
working.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I worry about is the one click attack where just doing one thing and the rest is automated. So ClickFix, where you have to do multiple clicks for the attacker to succeed. I absolutely agree. It is. I mean, our practical tip is simple on this. It's like if you have a normal process that even like every user has done a captcha by moving images over other images, picking numbers, picking the fire hydrants, whatever the heck it is. If you have something that suddenly makes you do a lot of different steps just to get past a captcha, you know right away something bad is happening.
You and I know right away, and everyone
But
listening
no,
knows right
that's what
away.
I'm saying. Practical tips. That's the tip listeners should have, and they should be giving every single one of their users. It's a
How do we
pretty
get that
obvious
to
thing.
every, like you said, grandma and grandpa in the world to not fall for that too?
Cybersecurity month. I mean, we
Yeah.
do. We do tell them things like this. Hopefully, we have some listeners that are just normal people.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, either way, I think good sign that we're getting more interaction from these before they're successful. But yeah, these ones are weird. Um, moving on though. So the last story I want to talk about uh, was actually it's when I initially saw this headline, I thought, okay, well, whatever. That's just another political person throwing a stone or whatever. But I think there's actually some interesting discussion points out of what we're about to dive into. Where just this last Wednesday, Senator Ron Wyden sent a letter to the chair of the FTC requesting them to investigate and hold Microsoft accountable for what he calls gross cybersecurity negligence. He starts by pointing to a few different stats. Like in February 2025, there was a report from the Director of National Intelligence that said ransomware attacks are increasing, like 15% increase in 2024, 103% increase from just 2 years prior. Pointed out that Microsoft is the de facto monopoly for operating systems used by companies and governments. And then they made a few claims in there. First, that Microsoft, they choose the defaults for their operating system, which is correct. And that includes security features and security settings. And while organizations can change these settings, many don't. I think that's probably fair and accurate, at least in some part. Then they say that in its default configuration, Microsoft Windows is incredibly vulnerable to ransomware because of engineering decisions that are hidden from users.
So
Which
can we
is,
pause
yeah,
here? Uh, I don't like the connection to ransom. So first of all, yes, this is political, but in the past, I often side with Ron Wyden in that the only thing I like is he is paying attention to cybersecurity and cyber threats, and he tends to want to uh, push certain security related privacy stuff and have more specific laws and crimes other than just a basic computer fraud, abuse, and fraud. Why can't I think of the CFFA?
Computer Fraud and Abuse Act.
There we go. Uh, like he realizes that one law that we use to cover everything is not sufficient and kind of wants more. But I disliked that. Like in a second we're going to get to the crux of it. Like this, I know he's explaining it to 100 bazillion-year-old ancient idiots in Congress, so he's not going to technical details. And there is one technical detail in what Windows does that's a pretty insecure default that shouldn't exist, and I think we're going to get to it. But it's not just rent. They're not I mean, that's insecure default can cause anything, like literally. So I think the ransomware crap and blaming them for the ransomware is stupid. It's every single attack can be caused by a vulnerability like this, and that still doesn't get a person off the hook for clicking on something stupid that they shouldn't have clicked on in the first place. So I'm giving a little bit of my opinion early, but I it feels a little too political. Like he's using a big healthcare ransomware infection to push the idea that Microsoft has held on to something far too long that we'll talk about, and maybe that is what we should focus on. But attaching it to ransomware and the blame for one very specific ransomware infection seems silly to me. I'm not sure what you think.
I'll give my opinion once we get through a bit more of the meat on this. But so,
Okay.
like you just mentioned, they walked through the 2024 Ascension Medical ransomware event happened last year, including some like details about what happened. So, a contractor using an Ascension laptop conducted a search on Microsoft's Bing search engine, which Microsoft's Edge browser uses by default. The contractor clicked on a malicious link, so there was the user action in this case, which downloaded malware, infecting the laptop, and then the attacker was able to move laterally within Ascension's network and ultimately gained admin credentials on Microsoft's Active Directory domain within there. So he pointed out all these kind of Microsoft-owned pieces of the puzzle along the way that led to this ransomware attack. They specifically focused on, though, how the attackers use a technique called Kerber roasting to gain access to privileged accounts on Ascension's domain. And specifically, this attack was enabled because Microsoft continues to support RC4 as an encryption algorithm for Kerberos tickets, even though it's not the default AES's. RC4 is still allowed. And they mentioned, quote, according to Microsoft, this threat can be mitigated by setting long passwords that are at least 14 characters long, but Microsoft software does not require such a password for privileged accounts. So I guess before diving in, like maybe we take a quick detour and talk about Kerber roasting for those that aren't familiar with that attack technique. So I guess like Kerberos at like 1,000-foot level first, there's a central authority called a key distribution center. It's on your domain controller. It's basically the controller responsible for authenticating users and services on a network by issuing them tickets. And those users and services can exchange those tickets with each other to verify their identity with one each other.
By the yeah, can I also say that, by the way, Kerberos ticketing, as far as passing cryptographic information to confirm someone's authenticated over Windows SMB or whatever, is actually an update to what Microsoft used before, which was just landman hashing. So the one thing to know is pass the hash. A lot of people have heard of pass, like Landman, and the normal way to over a network share hashes to show that you're already validly, authenticated, had all kinds of issues that had passed the hash. So Kerberos is the newer version of this that's supposed to have a number of security fixes and things that make it much harder. There's still things like the Kerberos golden ticket. There's still definitely lateral. This is all about lateral movement, by the way, not about the initial ransomware infection. It's only lateral movement. But there's all kinds of security mechanisms in Kerberos that's supposed to help. There's still some things you can get by if people have weak defaults, and one of them is the fact that, of course, if your entire encryption or cryptography is based on an outdated, broken algorithm, who cares how good Kerberos is?
So, see, back to the primer. KDC, Key Distribution Center, hands out tickets to users and services. If a user wants to access a service, they can send a request to the KDC's ticket granting service, which is a TGS, just another acronym. That KDC then sends back a ticket granting service ticket, which is encrypted using the hash of the service account's password. And this is one piece that we'll get back to in a second.
That hash.
The user presents this ticket granting service ticket to whatever service they're trying to log into, like a database, a web app, whatever. It then authenticates the user using the service account's password to decrypt and verify the ticket before creating a secure session. So there's a few design flaws in Kerberos that leave this open to Kerberosting. First, that KDC, the kind of central brain for this, it doesn't check whether the user is authorized to access that server or not, that service or not. Any user can request access and request a ticket for any service, and it's up to the service itself to enforce its permission. So that's issue number one. The second is every service on a domain must have a service account. So an actual Active Directory account that'll have a password on it. And sometimes that password might be configured to never expire. And sometimes that service account can have high level of privileges on the domain for whatever it's trying to do. It's issue number two. And then issue number three is those Kerberos tickets are encrypted using the hash of that service account's password as the key. So it takes the password, turns it through a one-way hash to a cryptographic hash, uses that to encrypt the ticket. So in a Kerberosting attack, the attacker starts with just any compromised domain account. Doesn't matter how low privilege it is, as long as it has access to the domain, that's requirement one. Then using that account, they use LDAP to look for other accounts that have that service principal name set, meaning it's a service account. They then request a ticket granting service ticket for that service account. That KDC, the brain, encrypts it using the hash of that account's password. Now the attacker takes that ticket offline and starts trying to crack it, where they guess a password, hash it, then try and decrypt the ticket. If they're able to decrypt it, they know that they have the right password. Then they can log in with that service account and gain whatever permissions it has. So this is fueled by allowing RC4 as the encryption algorithm, because it is
Cracking it
really easy
trivial
to crack that quickly. Like AES isn't exactly slow either to try and crack. RC4 is extremely easy, especially with smaller passwords that service accounts might be using. Very easy to crack that offline, then come back and log in as the service account. Back to the letter, I guess. Like Wyden spoke to senior Microsoft officials in July 2024 after that February incident, and urged them to warn their customers about the threat posed by Kerberosting. Pausing for a second, I love that there's a senator that's like aware enough, or has, I guess, aides they're aware enough about Kerberosting to like send that kind of a letter. So that's
kind of why I like Ron Wyden, whether or not I agree with all of his tactics. But let's get back to him claiming Microsoft's responsible for all the ransomware. The ransomware infection had nothing to do with the Kerberosting or the initial breach that allows for the ransomware. Like you could have installed ransomware on that one computer and been done with it. Kerberosting gives you the lateral movement that can allow you to infect the rest of the organization. But the initial infection had to either be an O-day or an unpatched vulnerability in that browser that could have automatically downloaded something, or someone downloading something despite the other protections Windows has. So That's why I find the premise he's using silly. Do I like that he's trying to point out there's huge flaws that allow crazy lateral movement in Microsoft networks still to this day, still with Kerberos, if you don't actually pay very careful attention to the settings and the ciphers you allow. Most administrators aren't going to, like, for them to know they have to go disable certain ciphers is going to be or algorithms is crazy. So I like what he's doing here, but that doesn't mean Microsoft is like the infection vector, the root cause is not Kerberoasting. So that's
So
the
I agree
only
that
kind of complaint I have.
the ransomware premise, I think, is the reason the message got created. But at the end of the day, this is a secure by default conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Where
That's the premise he should have used.
Microsoft is in a position to set secure defaults and to enforce secure defaults. And like you just said, like relying on the sysadmin to know they need to go change this setting to disable RC4 to reduce the risk of this type of attack. Like
Or
that
why
is a
does
lot.
Microsoft even do it anymore? I get interoperability, but it's
Yep.
been decades at this point. So, yeah.
Like a
So
lot of our
yes, let's go back to
listeners,
secure default. Yeah.
a lot of our listeners have probably already done that. But think about like, the traditional just VAR, value added reseller, that like sets up a Windows server and walks away, and then it's just running in like a coffee shop or a law firm. Like they probably didn't go to the
Or
effort to
for the
go.
network admins that don't have the
Yeah,
channel too, that just are setting up their own AD or yeah.
yeah. So like the point he's trying to make, it's interesting, is there's this paragraph in here that stands out that I'm going to quote. There's one company benefiting from this status quo, and that's Microsoft itself. Instead of delivering secure software to its customers, Microsoft has built a multi-billion-dollar secondary business selling cybersecurity add-on services to those organizations that can afford it. At this point, Microsoft has become like an arsonist selling firefighter services to their victims, which is a strongly worded statement here. But I don't know. I'm of the opinion there's a bit of a kernel of truth in here where it feels a little weird that in a like kind of borderline, if not actual monopoly, at least in a business setting of Microsoft Office, Microsoft Edge, other Microsoft tools, they're in a position to be more strict about secure defaults. Instead, they're making a ton of money selling Defender for endpoint P2 licenses, which it's interesting. I think, but at the end of the day, like the call to action of at least demanding they do more secure defaults is valid. And I think that
Yes,
is true
that I
across the
agree.
board to everyone.
I will say, just to comment on my opinion, I don't have the highest opinion of Microsoft all the time, but I don't think they're keeping this default to make more money off Defender and their security. I do think it's silly that they sell an operating system and then they sell security software for it. They should be working just in general on making the operating system as secure as possible, period, for free. But I don't. I have a feel like I think this is more corporate idiocracy. Like I see product managers in a room complaining about interopera. Like they should remove RC4 completely. It should have been done by now. But they have all these medical devices running Windows XP that are, I mean, not Windows XP that a user can install. It's an MRI machine that only that company can actually update. And that company is still using old versions for their MRI machine that they're never going to update. So I think there's all kinds of dumb reasons where Microsoft is not taking a hard stance on this and is allowing an outdated cipher for a long period of time. I mean, do they mind that they're getting extra profit from their security business? No, but I think he's stretching. I think I just would have liked this better if he talked about secure by default and if he focused on that. And instead of kind of implying that in this case they're doing it just for security, I wouldn't mind if he pointed out there is some hypocrisy on selling security software in general when you don't even have secure defaults yet. Uh, but I just have a feeling this specific case is all about some dumb interoperability thing. And it probably has more to do with OT networks in medical fields not being able for 20 plus years. Like if you create an MRI machine, they exist for 10 or 20 years in the hospital. Yes, we know they're running Windows XP inside them, but it's not XP that the hospital can add an endpoint client to. It's not XP that the hospital is allowed to update. because it's critical software and it's built on that platform. And the stupid company that made the software is not updating Windows and hasn't tested their critical MRI software on the new stuff. So personally, I think you should also be targeting the vendors of critical multi-decade OT equipment that aren't upgrading their stuff.
I think I'm coming around to an opinion that Microsoft probably should start throwing their weight around a little bit more, though. Where,
Yes,
like, if they
they
did
can
just come out
solve
and
it. Yeah.
say, "We've deprecated RC4. If your stuff breaks, then tough luck. Go
Yes.
work with your vendor to fix it."
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
that
That's a
it
good
will
point.
absolutely cause disruption. But at
Yeah.
the same, and I know Microsoft's fear. The reason they're probably not doing it is like you said, some product manager saying, "Oh no, someone's going to go to some other operating system if we
And
pick them off like
there's
this."
$40 million from one particular vendor that's, yeah, and they're worried about that revenue loss.
But let's
So
be
that's
real. Like,
yeah,
they're not, like, at least not in some big capacity going to migrate to
no.
something else. And I feel like Microsoft has some more wiggle room in here to be a bit
Yeah.
more like strong in
The same
defining
monopoly
defaults.
stuff Ron talks about gives them power to actually be a leader in security and
Yeah.
force people that below them that might be causing them to keep this legacy stuff to. So I do agree with that. Absolutely, Mark.
Yeah.
They should take a stronger stance. I don't believe their new CEO is going to do that. He's more for innovation. And I hear the Trustworthy Computing Organization has been deprecated and has less power now. But I absolutely agree that that's what they should be doing,
Yeah.
using that monopoly to make the industry more secure.
And I think that is, like, at the end, the goal of this letter that Wyden said. And even if disagree with some of the wording for it, like, I agree with the goal on it, that Microsoft can be doing better. Now, do I think it's like gross security negligence? Probably not that extreme. I think it's more they could be doing more, and they should be doing more. And I hope that this or something else pushes them to do a bit more as that leader. But if it takes a overly grandiosely written letter to get there, then so be it.
The problem is we don't really care about politics when we're talking cyber security, but Ron Wyden does happen to be a Democrat. So I think this letter is just all theater. The Congress is not going to care about it. The FTC is not going to care about it. It's going to go away and nothing's going to. So that's my cynical hot take. I agree with you. I wish it would have some impact, but based on the House and the Congress right now and the administration that controls things like the FTC, they're not going to care about what Ron Wyden says.
I unfortunately agree with you on that from like a federal standpoint, but it is possible that this slowly pushes Microsoft at least towards solving this one specific issue of still allowing RC4 as
Yeah.
an algorithm, and maybe we'll push them towards deprecating that finally. I mean, crap, they're
Although on the
already
flip side, people. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. They're already.
making me, like, my laptop down here on the floor isn't going to work anymore after, well, at least not receive security updates anymore after a bit because of Microsoft's strong requirements for Windows 11, for example. Like, they're
Yeah.
using some of their strength in that area. They could definitely use it in this area too.
Yeah. It's sad that they're only doing it for licensing to renew their operating system instead of also securing us too.
Yep.
Yeah. I
But
forgot what I was going to say. That's
I'm sure it
okay.
was massively important. Sorry. But yeah, I guess we'll see what comes of it. Microsoft did promise 11 months ago that they would release a security update
Oh,
to disable RC4 encryption. It's been 11 months, so maybe the 12th month is the charm, and next month we'll be talking about how they disabled RC4.
I
Or
did
maybe not.
remember what I was going to say, which was if you are watching the YouTube version of this, you probably saw me showing Microsoft's page on curb roasting. So at the very least, a practical tip for this is go check out whether or not you hate Microsoft for keeping RC4 or not. They do have a mitigation page on curb roasting. You can go there. You can adjust your own settings so that you don't have to worry about this as much until
Yep,
some new flaw is found in some new cipher.
agreed. So yeah, well, let's see if it works. Corey thinks it won't. I think maybe.
Like all the other things we've talked about, like the IoT law, like secure by default, by the way. Secured by default has feels like it's essentially gone away since it was started by the previous administration.
Yep,
We'll
agreed.
see, I guess.
We'll see. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, or Corey and I get fired. If you had any questions on today's episode or suggestions for future episode topics, you can reach out to us on Blue Sky. I'm at I'm not Second Ep. Corey's Second Ep. I'm at itsmark.me. Man, it's been a week. Uh, we're also on Instagram. What is it? WatchGuard_technologies. Please send us your recipes on there too.
Or what you
Thanks
had
again
for
for
lunch or
listening.
breakfast. All your stage photos showing your perfectly curated life. We'll take those too.
If it's not grammed, it didn't happen. Thanks again for listening, and you will hear from us next week. Cool.